I want to take you back to a guy named James Otis. James Otis was a founding father to the founding fathers. A number of the big name founding fathers, John Adams and Sam Adams and John Hancock, they were mentored by this man right here. He was a great attorney. He was in the years leading up to the American Revolution. And one of the most notable things he did was an argument in front of the British courts in 1761 here in America. 1761 here in America, it dealt with what were called writs of assistance. Now, we don't really know what that is today because we don't study it much. This is super, super important because a writ of assistance was very much like a search warrant, except it was blank. There was nothing filled in on it. So what happens is, if I'm a British official and I say, I want a writ of assistance, I'm going to your house, I walk into your house with a blank search warrant. And I start going through all the closets and cupboards, and I pull out all the drawers, and I look under all the mattresses, and I keep looking till I find something that I think is illegal. And once I find it, then I will fill out that search warrant and say, this is what I was looking for. I was looking for whatever you had over here in the third drawer down in the chest of drawers. And then I fill it out and I go give it to a judge and said, I found something illegal in his home. And the judge says, well, go arrest him. He had something illegal. That writ of assistance allowed anybody to come into your home at any point in time and look for anything that they might consider to be illegal, whether they actually knew something was there or not. So what happened was he argued against this in the courts. This is what he told the judges. He said, I will to my dying day oppose with all the powers and faculties God has given me all such instruments as slavery and villainy as the writ of assistance is. To him, there was nothing more low than those writs of assistance. So he's arguing against it to the British courts, and he's a British attorney. He said, it is the worst instrument of arbitrary power and is destructive of liberty and the fundamental principles of law. One of the most essential rights is the freedom of one's house. A man's house is his castle. These writs totally annihilate these rights. Now, notice this phrase, a man's house is his castle. This is where it gets used in American history. This is where it pops up. A lot of the other founding fathers quoted it later, but it goes back to this argument right here. A man's house is his castle. He said, it's a power that places the liberty of every man in the hands of every petty officer. In other words, any government bureaucrat can now come in and take my liberty away. My house is no longer my castle, who may reign secure in his petty tyranny and spread terror and desolation around him. Both reason and the Constitution are against such writs. Now, I mentioned that he had a huge impact on a number of founding fathers, and one was a young John Adams who saw all the arguments that went with this, because this was British policy at the time. It was being done by the British, but John Adams heard this. A man's house is his castle. And he thought about that for the next 15 years leading up to the American Revolution. And as we got close to the Revolution, this is what John Adams recalled looking back. He said that regarding that 1761 case, he said American independence was then and there born. Where? In that courtroom when he argued that a man's house is his castle. Every man in the crowded audience went away, as I did, ready to take arms against writs of assistance. This kind of tyranny we won't tolerate. There and then was the first scene of the first act of opposition to the arbitrary claims of Great Britain. Then and there, with the child independence was born. In 15 years, namely in 1776, he grew up to manhood and declared himself free. So he's saying everything we did in American independence movement goes back to the writs of assistance in 1761, which was based on the doctrine that every man's home is his castle.